pretty similar to what I'm going to be talking about right now. Right, full name Muzikawa. So yeah, that's it, 8 letters. I'm from a place called Umlazi in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Pretty much a township in KZN. So that is east of South Africa. I did everything there, like everything, primary, high school, everything there. The very first time that I left the province was when I had to go to university. That was the very first time I crossed the borders to go anywhere else, which was quite interesting because how I chose which was to go to was one of the things one of the decision points was that I just wanted to go far from where I had spent like a huge chunk of my life. Actually, all of my life up until the point that I went to university. So the university that I went to is called UWits University. It's actually in Joburg, still in South Africa. And no, I didn't do anything technical, unless if you count like doing PowerPoint presentations as something technical. So I did a Bachelor of Commerce, majoring in both management and marketing. So the reason for that was this: when I left school, I was blank. Like where I didn't know what to do. Like I knew I wanted to go to university, but I had no clue what I was going to do. So I went through a process of elimination. I just decided to do something that I would know for sure I was going to need or use in the future. So even if I did a career change at some point, I wanted to do something that I knew was gonna come in handy at some point. So that's how I ended up doing Bachelor of Commerce. Right, so that's a brief rundown. So let's talk about the actual journey, right? One of my biggest tipping points in my life was in grade 10. So that's like 2 years before you finish high school. So in grade 10, something interesting happened, right? Before then, before grade 10, I was the king of averages. So this means if we wrote a test and everyone passed the test, then I was going to pass the test. But if we wrote a test and a lot of students failed the test, then chances are I would have failed the test as well. So it was like that for a very long time. That's how I knew if I passed or failed. My only question was, did most people pass it or not, right? And then in grade 10, something interesting. A lot of people passed. I thought I passed, and it ended up. And I ended up being the laughingstock of the class because that specific test that we wrote, I got a 0, like a 0. Not like I didn't write 0, like I tried to answer the question 0, but I didn't get anything. Yeah, so that was a wake-up moment in grade 10, right? So immediately after that, I don't know if I was depressed or what, but I was just not myself for like a week because everyone had passed the test and I just failed straight. So I ended up confiding to a friend who, for some reason, his marks had started going up whilst my one were tanking. So I confided in him and like, hey, Nati, like you're obviously doing something different. Because I know, when you have that one friend that you know that this guy, I cannot define him as smart. Okay, he is smart, but at the time, like we were in the same boat. Like starting off high school, we were in the same average boat, and then out of nowhere, I get a 0, and he's flying. So I just confided in him, like, okay, what happened? So the big issue with me was there was no money for varsity. At the time, there was no, like I knew for a fact, there was no funds for me to go to varsity. Even for registration, it was going to be a mission just to get those funds. So the only way I was going to get to varsity was going to be through some type of sponsorship, whether it's some type of sponsorship, a bursary, a scholarship, anything like that. So and getting a 0 was not going to help me with that. So I confided in Nati, telling him, hey man, something, I don't know what's happening. And so Nati gave me a few pointers in terms of what he was doing to improve his marks. But the advice pretty much boiled down to wake up early in the morning, like an hour or 2 hours before we need to go to school, and just study. Right. So that was his game plan. So I took his game plan and tried to implement it. The first 2 weeks, 2 months was a pain. Like I wasn't used to just waking up without needing to go anywhere. Like normally I'd do things because I had to. No, I'd wake up because I had to wake up and go to school. But now I'd wake up and tried to study, which was a bit of an issue, especially in winter. Like waking up early was a pain. But yeah, I did that, and unfortunately it worked out. My marks started climbing back up again. Grade 11, grade 12. Grade 12, I was full on studying 7 days a week, no breaks, no nothing, which helped out. So everything, so my marks did improve a lot. Like they improved a lot, like crazy a lot, right? Because I'd been studying like daily for a couple of months. No, not a couple of months, a couple of years actually. And yeah, fortunately for me, I did end up with a scholarship, no bursary to go to varsity, and my marks were so great that I got accepted for everything, which caused a new problem. So when you're going to varsity, I applied for like 4 or 5 varsities and like 3 or 4 different fields, and you get accepted for everything. And now I had to make a decision. Like I remember to this day, the day when I finally made my final decision to go to Vert was on a phone call. Like these guys had given me a scholarship to go do accounting at any university. So I had to pick between Vets, UCT, what's the other one? UKZN, and I've forgotten the other one as well. So like it's split second decision. I just said, I know what, I'm going to Joburg. So that's how I ended up to Vets. So that, yeah, so that was interesting. Going from getting A0 to getting like top marks. I think they were the top marks at my school exactly for that year. So that was great. So again, reaching that goal created a new problem. And that new problem was now, wait, now that I'm in varsity, now what? I hadn't planned for anything after that. Like I focused so much on just getting into varsity that when I got to varsity, I was lost again, right? So for now the circumstances were different now. Like it's the freedom, it's the stipend from my sponsor, it's the girls, it's the parties, it's yeah, I was everywhere. I was everywhere. And something interesting happened in varsity, right? Like first year. Yeah, first year. So I'm sitting with this guy Mezu, and like he was like it was my first time in my life where I met someone who I can confidently call a geek, right? So this guy's name was Mezu, and he was one of my tutors in one of the classes, right? So we're sitting there, we're talking, and he tells me about a media player that he designed, right? So I'm like, we designed a media player. I'm like, okay, cool, right? And he starts going off about C, this, Java that, .NET this. And I'm thinking to my head, you know what? I know a lot about gadgets and stuff. So I've never seen a gadget called C++. Like I actually asked him, like, where do you buy this C++ thing that you create media players with? And he's like, no, that's it's not a thing. It's like a programming language that you use to program things. And that day was the first time I knew about programming languages. Mind you, I'm already inside at varsity. And I'm like, okay. And at that point, that's when I actually started researching, but casually, like researching stuff around programming computers and all those things. I would have done a lot more research if I hadn't received another opportunity. So a friend of mine had sweet talked his way into almost getting a contract to run like a convenience shop inside the school, right? Or inside the residence where I stayed, and we got the contract, right? So now just 2 of us. We're running a convenience shop inside the rest of that we stay in, and again, yeah, new. How can I say it? That success caused a lot of headaches, right? So now, out of nowhere, I started having lots of money. Okay, more money than I'd ever had. Even coming before school, even the stipend couldn't come close to what the shop was making. And again, the cycle repeated, the whole cycle of partying and not studying. And so I actually went from being a top student coming in varsity to being one of the lowest. Like I remember this one time, I think it was September, where I flunked almost everything. But the reason for flunking now was different. The reason that I was flunking in that year was a part of me just didn't see the need to study anymore, because it was like, why study for a job that's going to potentially get me less money than what I was making at the time? But fortunately for me, the shop that I was running with this friend of mine, had one major clause inside of it, is that you could only run the shop if you were still a student inside the varsity. So I couldn't drop out, because if I do that, then I lose the shop. So I had to stay a student. So that's how I continued with my studies. So I continued with that. Unfortunately, my business partner, for different set of reasons, he had to drop out, which ultimately terminated the contract. So he took his proceeds and he furthered his studies in a different school. I took my proceeds and I bought a car. The worst car I've ever bought. Like, no thought process put into like researching cars or checking cars or anything. I just said, oh, that VW Golf looks nice, I'm buying it. That's it. Yeah, that was interesting. Especially thinking about the fact that I didn't have a driver's license at the time, but I just wanted a car, so I got the car, and I wanted about the driver's license later. So that was my journey, like through adversity, right? So yeah, now here's an interesting bit. So fortunately, I did make it out of varsity. I got my BCom and everything, and then the big question came: now what? Again, I hadn't planned for this as well, but for the longest time, I've always wanted to go into business and do like businessy type stuff, which didn't happen. Out of varsity, I ended up working for an advertising agency. It was a small advertising agency that my father was working in with a couple of his friends. So that taught me a lot about marketing. Like in my mind, I would say almost as much as the degree that I did, or even more. Like the small things, like images, color coordination, logos, design, typography, all of those things. That's I learned those things for in that year when I was working for an ad agency. Unfortunately, that agency went under, and I had to, I don't know, look for something else. And I ended up working for a retail company, one of the biggest retail companies in Africa, if not the biggest. Okay, it's not the biggest. It's one of the biggest though. It's a company called Messmart. So I ended up working for that, and they owned like a huge chain of stores. That taught me about retail in general, like how things get bought, how are they sold, the margins, and all those things. It was quite interesting to learn about how much these companies don't compete. Like you think that just because you're buying a Samsung phone that you're better than someone who's buying maybe, I don't know, an Oppo phone or something like that, only to find out that the main holding company is one company, or the parts themselves, like half of an iPhone is actually half of a Samsung or something like that, right? That was interesting. I saw that a lot with TVs. So if you think your TV is different from your neighbors, it's probably not. The LCD screens are coming from one of three companies in the entire world, especially the LED ones. So yeah, that was interesting. And again, the retail got too interesting for me. I dropped it, and I said, and I did my first real stint. Okay, second stint in entrepreneurship. So actually, when I left the retail company, I didn't know what I wanted to do. All I knew was I wanted to leave the job. So I just dropped the job, took my savings, and tried creating, or opened up internet cafes, 2 internet cafes. The first one didn't work out, closed it. The second one, which almost worked, when the first one fell, my savings were low, but I still had enough to try another stint. Went for the second internet cafe. That one almost worked until one day we opened only to find that all of the computers, printers, everything was stolen. These guys had actually bought through the wall of the internet cafe, like not the doors, not the windows, like behind the internet cafe. They broke down the walls, took everything, like, okay, not everything, like almost everything. What they didn't take was the keyboards and the mice. Everything else was gone, right? Yeah, so that's when I was properly, like, I don't know, bankrupt, because I had no savings, anything, nothing. And then out of that, something interesting happened. If I was ever depressed, it was probably at that time, because there was nothing. There was like clean nothing. So I decided to not to do anything serious for like a month or so to like gather my thoughts. But at that time, I ended up playing a lot of computer games, like a lot of computer games using my brother's laptop. And now the problem is, if you play too many games, if you know about computer games, you end up messing up the keyboard if you play computer games on a laptop. So I would just use one of the keyboards as an external keyboard to play the games. And then a thought invaded my mind. And this thought was, what if I could create my own controls? Like instead of just using the keyboard, like because like as a kid, I used to like play arcade machines, like and use physical controls with the gear knob and everything. And then I started researching that, and I found out that buying the controls was expensive. It's not like console controls, like your Xbox controls with just the buttons and a small gear knob. Like if you want the arcade setup, that thing is expensive. But I found out that there were some people who actually just jerry rig a couple of things and create their own controls. So I decided to do that. Like I spent some time designing the controls. Like in this image here, it would be just only this part. Yeah, so I did that. And did I switch on this thing? I flipped. No, it's fine. So on an arcade machine, it's just the buttons and the gear. So I figured out how to do that, right? Now, mind you, at this time, I still do not know how to program. I just looked at what people did and tried to put everything together. Like I learned how to solder, how to do woodwork, and how to do a whole lot of things. And fortunately, I did that. Now the problem is this small project of trying to come up with my own controls that caused me to run out of cash completely, like because of the research and the traveling and everything. So I went to my brother who had a job at the time, and I was like, "Hey man, listen, I don't have any money, right? So, but I've managed to actually create these controls. And what I was thinking is, if I could figure out how to connect the coin mechanism onto the computer, that would mean I essentially have an arcade machine. So I can actually create my own arcade machines if I can figure out how to put in the coin mech and connect the coin mechanism with the controls. So my brother was like, okay, no, it's fine. I'll lend you some money and we'll see what happens. I remember, like, he lent me 2,000 rands to try and figure it out. Went back, did that. Fortunately, it worked. So from the image that you are seeing now on the presentation, there was the first arcade machine that I built, which is just a computer that I generated to turn, and then I just turned it into an arcade machine. And then we took that, put it in one of the shops close to where I stayed, and it actually made money. Like kids loved it. Like it made a lot of money. Like I would count stacks of 50-cent coins, like stacks and stacks of coins manually. And then I created another one and another one and another one. At some point, I think there were like 14. Okay, I don't know the exact number right now, but it was a lot of arcade machines that were all over the place. And then I added pool tables, and it was a business, and it was thriving until it started not thriving, right? What was happening at the same time as this business was growing, the petrol price was also climbing. So the problem with these things was they were all custom built machines. So it was difficult for me to teach someone else how to like manage, or how can I say it, how to maintain them. So if anything broke, I needed to be there to go fix it. So I ended up traveling a lot because of this. And then one day I was like, no, the cost of traveling is just too much. So I decided I was gonna close the business, or at least close the arcade machine parts and continue with the pool table parts. But then this one guy just came in and bought the entire thing. So yeah, I ended up selling all of those things, and then I was back to not doing anything again. But fortunately, after that, like a friend of mine just told me about this company that was, how can I say it? This company that was looking for people with the commerce background. So I ended up going to that company, and the company sold tobacco. Okay, still sells tobacco. I stayed the longest I've been in a corporate. Any job, okay, let me just say corporate. Any job, the longest I've been was there, where I spent like 3 years inside of that company. It would have been more, but the problem was the thing that I was doing wasn't me. Right. So this, for me, speaks to the importance of culture in an organization. Like the culture and the people there were really great, which is why I stayed there. The amount of years that I stayed there, and then something inside of me just said no. Like I didn't envision myself going up. Like I didn't like my boss's job. I didn't like my boss's job. I didn't like that boss's or their boss's job. Even going across, like for me, it wasn't that interesting. So I just thought, okay, if I'm not gonna move up or across, then I need to move out, right? I didn't have a plan, set dates for stuff. So I just decided on the last year that I was there that on my birthday, the present that I was going to give myself was me resigning. Right, and I actually went through with it. So on my birthday, the last year that I was there, I resigned. I tried to walk out on my birthday, but they didn't allow me because my birthday was like on a Wednesday or something, and they asked me to stay until Friday. So yeah, that didn't go exactly as planned, but oh well, I was almost there. Right. So now back to business again, right? So now what I wanted to do was I learned a lot about uh, the tech world and everything that has, or a lot of things that have to do with the tech worlds. I still don't know how to code, right? That's the important bit with all of these things. So I decided to be a tech entrepreneur, and the first one of the first ideas that I had was. Uh, if you're familiar with a company called Tech, so it's pretty much a portal where people could come in to request tradesmen, like if you want a plumber or you want an electrician or someone to come help you out at your house, right? So that was the idea, and I didn't know how to code, so I hired these guys to do it for me. Man, that was a bad decision. Like I wasted a lot of money hiring people who didn't know what they were doing as well, right? So we ended up fighting. I lost a lot of cash. They tried to charge me for things they didn't do. It was just bad, right? So I closed that idea. I tried to come up with another idea. This time around, I had some idea of what was required, with and that one also didn't work. The guys that I had were just slow. Oh, at the time, I thought they were slow, but now I know that they also didn't know um, what to do. Right? Yeah, they came, even though they came, they know how to do it. So now I'm running out of funds, right? So I took all the cash that I had that I'd saved up from the tobacco company and pushed it into a couple of tech startups, which all folded before they even got started. Right, like they never even launched. Especially the first one, their one was just bad. So now I decided, you know what? Instead of me paying people to do these things, let me just learn how to code, right? Uh, Big problem was I wasn't keen on going back to university at this time, but I did want to learn how to do this thing. So I decided, you know what? Let me just teach myself. Um, because the very first programming language that I tried to teach myself was Java. And Java, the person who was coding for the first time without any help was a problem. So Java didn't work. Ended up trying PHP. PHP almost worked, but then I learned about JavaScript. So I switched to JavaScript. And as I was learning about JavaScript, someone talked about Python. So now I'm looking at this Python thing, thinking, flip, am I going to change programming languages again? Um, Mind you, all this time is I don't have any income. I'm just living off my savings that are majorly depleted. So another thing that was happening was the boot camps had started becoming a thing. Like internationally, the boot camps were starting to become a thing. So I thought, okay, since it is really difficult for me to teach myself how to code, why not? I don't know. Why don't just do a course on programming, right? So that would clear up whether this coding thing was for me or not. And so I decided I was gonna try and find a way to do a course on programming. The big problem, the massive problem was I didn't have any money for any course, right? So that was a big deterrent. I looked around and everything was just expensive. And then on Black Friday, I remember a friend of mine was getting married a day after Black Friday. So I went up to his house, and when I was sitting there, like on the Friday, I don't know why I was looking around stuff on the internet, but it was Black Friday because I was just window shopping all the Black Friday sales. And fortunately, this one online school had the courses slashed by 50%. So at that time, I thought, okay, this course, even the 50% discount, the course was still expensive for me at the time anyways. So I decided, you know what, if this programming thing is for me, this course is going to show me, right? Because there's a lot of things I cannot figure out for myself. So I took some of the funds that I had, and I bought the course. It was late, I think, what's Black Friday? November. It was late November, right? And I took the course. And that's when a lot of things started changing, right? So now, wait, where am I? I'm here, right? So now I'm starting. I'm doing the course. I'm learning about Python and all those things. It was a Python-based course, and I had this one friend who wouldn't shut up about Bitcoin. She was always something Bitcoin, something Bitcoin, right? And I'm looking at this Bitcoin thinking, you know what, this might be a scam. Like, I'm not gonna take the very few funds that I have and put it on this thing, and I'm gonna lose all of my money, which I don't have. Remember, I don't have a job. I'm just studying now, right? So what I decided to do was, seeing as how I could now program, I could actually use programming to actually trade this Bitcoin thing, right? So I'm not investing in it, but I care, but I decided to trade it, which was actually a good decision. So I made, I'm not going to say a living, but I survived. I survived about 2 years just off trading Bitcoin and a whole lot of and a whole lot of programming. What the interesting thing is, one of the packages that I relied on was Pandas to show me all the prices and everything. But I spent more than a year thinking that Pandas was just something you use to put stuff in a table. And that's it. I didn't know anything else. And that's because someone on Stack Overflow said, if you want to put things on the table, use something called Pandas. And that's what I did. So yeah, that was interesting. After that, I also started learning about this school called EDSA. Wasn't too sure about it, but it seemed like it could be something that had worked. And then I actually applied to EDSA and got accepted. Interestingly enough, my first application got rejected. Yeah, I was pissed. So I got rejected the first time around, and got accepted the second time around. And then, yeah, so yeah, guys, at some point I was a student at Explore, and what was interesting about my time as a student is a lot of the problems that I had when I was learning how to program, I saw that a lot of the students were also having, like, during the course. So I figured, you know what, let me just help out my fellow students. It started off with me just helping out students on one-on-one basis and stuff like that. But then the requests kept coming in, and more people were asking questions. And so I decided, you know what, let me just put everyone in the class, right? So so during my time as a student, it started off like once a week, where everyone just gather and then just help people with whatever issues that they were having, because a lot of the issues that the students were having were issues that I'd been through like a year or 2 years prior, when I was learning how to program. So yeah, I did that. Ended up creating like a YouTube channel with some videos on stuff, on a whole lot of stuff, including programming. So yeah, that was my stay in Explore. And yeah, so after Explore, like after I was done with the program, now we are here, right? So I did Explore, graduated from Explore. That's me on the right. And then my grandmother and my parents. What was interesting about the graduation at Explore is I was happier at the Explore graduation than I was at the university graduation. Like, the university graduation was just a thing I attended, but this one, like, it really mattered. So yeah, that was that, and then I ended up joining Explore the next year. And how I joined was, yeah, it needs its own session, that entire story. But then one of the things that happened was, when I got to Explore, there's something that was there's something that I noticed quickly when there was at that time. It's pretty much imposter syndrome. Like, if you see the people that work at Explore, like, everyone's amazing. Like, everyone has their story. Like, the thing that got to me was the academic credentials. Like, I only had a commerce degree, and and the other explorers had like like your honors, like your postgrad degrees, like on serious things, man. Like I'm like, hey man, it's marketing. What do you want? Right? So, but the nice thing about doing something like marketing, it teaches you stuff around like positioning, like issues around like not issues, like topics around like positioning. Like for instance, if you want to stand out, you need to be different. It's as simple as that. You need to be different in some fashion, right? At the time, and fortunately for me, at the time that I was joining Explore, the school had the relationship between Explore and AWS was getting bigger and bigger, and it was clear that the school would actually need more people to learn about the cloud or to learn more, especially with AWS. And so, because the stats and the machine learning and machine and model optimization were not my thing, so I figured, you know what, I can actually just go and I can actually just focus on this AWS thing, and then I'll see where it takes me. And yeah, so I came in as a facilitator, and I actually got sick. Oh yeah, that's another thing. The very first month, like very first month, even before I got paid, I got sick. Like January 2020, like I got sick and took sick leave. Right, there was, with that, it was an interesting period. So, and then I got sick. When I came back from hospital, the doctor gave me like the longest, what do you call it? Those days that you get from the doctors. Like he gave me an entire month to sit at home. It was like, no, you are not going back to work anytime soon. So you're going to sit at home for an entire month, and then only then you can think about going back to work. So during that month, I actually decided, you know what, I was not going to just sit an entire month. So I decided to study. Like I studied the cloud. Like I went all in quick. Like I went all in on the cloud. And fortunately for me, this one actually I got AWS certified during that leave period. And when I came back to work, the nice thing was I now had an AWS certificate, and then I started working more and more and more on AWS, and that's how even today, like I'm still focusing a lot on AWS inside of the academy. So yeah, if it touches AWS, I'm somewhere in there needing to do something, and yeah, that has been my journey, like up until this point. And what else? Do I have anything else? Oh yeah. So yeah, in closing, I read somewhere, I don't know what I was reading, but I'm not a big fan of quotes and fancy sayings and everything, but this one stuck with me, right? So this guy, T.S. Eliot, I'm thinking it came from him. He once said, only those who will risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go, right? Which to me always reminds me that I actually don't know how far I can take things. I don't know how far I can take my I don't know, my programming ability, my cloud engineering ability. I don't know how far I can take anything, but what I do know is I will push as much as I can to find out how far I can go. Right. And yeah, guys, that is it from me. That's my life story in a nutshell.